Hey everyone! Today I want to go over how to prune your tomato plants. So the first thing that you need to know before you start pruning your plant is what type of tomato plant you actually have. So there are two different types. You either have a determinate tomato plant or an indeterminate tomato plant. Determinate tomato plants you do not want to prune. Indeterminate you do. So let's talk a little bit about the difference. Determinate means that your tomato plant is only going to grow to a certain height, typically a lot smaller than an indeterminate plant, and it's only going to produce a certain amount of fruit in a very short amount of time. So if you do prune a determinate tomato plant type, you might be cutting off stems that are going to produce fruit, and you're going to hurt your overall fruit yield. Now with indeterminate plants, which is what this tomato plant type is, they grow a lot larger. They can get up anywhere between 6 and 12 feet. I'd say most of mine that I grow in containers end up being around 6 feet tall. And they're gonna produce throughout the growing season. So you can prune these pretty heavily and you're still gonna get a lot of tomato plants. So let's talk a little bit about how we want to prune our plants. The first thing that we can do is remove the suckers. So let me take you up close so you can see what the tomato suckers look like. Okay, so we are up close and personal in my tomato plant, and the first thing I want to go over is what exactly are tomato suckers. So basically, suckers are small shoots that are going to sprout from where the main stem of your plant meets another branch. So if you look between this main stem and the branch, you might see this little offshoot here. So this is a sucker. Because it's so small, it's easy to remove with your fingers, so you can simply just snap those off. Now we've had a few 90-degree days here. Tomatoes obviously love the hot weather, and I've been inside enjoying the air conditioner, but that means that there's been a lot of new growth on the plant, a lot of suckers that I have been ignoring. So if we look up here, this is actually a much larger sucker. So again, following one of the main stems, here's a branch, here's a sucker here. Now with suckers, it's not necessary to remove them. It's not something that you have to do in order to produce tomatoes, but it is something that I like to do for a few reasons. First is it's just easier to manage the plant if it's not a giant bush. So by removing these suckers, you're going to be able to maintain the size a little bit better, there's going to be more airflow, and overall it's going to be a much healthier plant. Now if your suckers get this large, it's not as easy to just snap them off with your finger. You don't want to ruin the plant. So I'm just going to come in here with my clippers and snip it off. Now something I've actually seen people do, but I have not tried it myself, is putting this in soil and it'll grow a whole nother tomato plant. But again, it's not something I've done myself, so I don't know how easy it is to do, but it's something I definitely want to try in the future. Let's look for a few more suckers. So again, following one of the main stems, we see a branch, and then right here is a little tiny sucker. I'm gonna just snap it off with my fingers. See if we can find any other ones. Here's one up here near the top of the plant. Again, the main stem, one of the branches, and this is going to be a sucker. Now besides removing suckers, you can also prune your tomato plant by removing some of the branches. And there's a few instances where I will actually come in and snip off a branch. First, anything that is on the lower part of my tomato plant where the leaves might be touching the soil, I like to snip those off because that's going to help reduce the chance of disease. So you're not going to have the leaves hitting the soil or the water splashing back onto the leaves when you go ahead and water your plant. The other way that I like to remove branches is if my plant gets too tall. So right now my plant is a pretty good size, but if it starts to get a little bit unruly, there's no problem with just snipping off the top of the branches, keeping your tomato plant at a set height. Again, with your indeterminate tomato plant types, they're still going to produce a large yield of tomatoes. And then the last time that I'll remove branches is if I feel that the plant is just getting a bit too congested. Tomatoes like to have airflow. Again, that's going to make a healthier plant, reduce disease. It's also easier to see pests if it's not a tangled mess inside. So if I have any branches that might be poking through, kind of cutting off the circulation of the airflow through the center of the plant, I'll just snip those off as well. I do tend to prune pretty heavily with my plants, mostly because the first year I grew tomatoes, I didn't prune them at all. They basically became a big bush. They had a lot of hornworms that I didn't see, and it wasn't as healthy of a plant. The last thing I want to go over today is when to prune. So I like to prune either early in the morning or later in the evening. I try to avoid the hottest times of the day, or if it's a cloudy day like this, I'll prune as well. I also try to find a time when I know there's not going to be rain right away, so look for cool periods of the day, a cloudy day, and a period of time when there's not going to be a lot of rainfall. Again, when you're cutting off a branch, you're leaving an open part of the plant, and I want to give it some time to heal before it's met with any extreme hot or wet weather. So that is everything when it comes to pruning your tomato plants. Again, you want to make sure that you're only pruning your indeterminate tomato plant types. If you aren't sure what type of plant you have, it should either say on the tag that comes with the plant, or easily just Google it and see what the results say. I think most of the plants I've had have all been indeterminate, and even though I grow in a container garden, they've always worked really well for me as long as I keep them pruned and keep them manageable. So if you have any other questions, let me know in the comments below. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.